Hi, I'm Tracy Sofra and this is the Women of Wealth podcast. So today I thought I might talk to you about the word risk. Risk gets a really bad rap, I got to tell you. It conjures up images of, losing your life savings, losing your house, starting all over again. It's nerve-wracking, right? And it really is highly misunderstood, I've got to tell you. And so my goal in this particular podcast is just to talk you through the word risk, demystify it, and make it more acceptable or palatable for you. So what does the word risk actually mean, and how do we manage this, and how do we make sure we're not falling into the trap of everybody talking about risk and kind of getting on people's bandwagon and kind of getting out of control with it all? It's really, really important to stabilize yourself and say, hang on a minute, what are we actually talking about here? So let me talk about the word risk. It depends on context. So I'm going to explain this. Just bear with me. Let me explain about understanding risk in the context of context by asking you a question. What is more risky, shares or cash? And I know what you're going to say. You're going to say shares, right? Because everyone thinks shares are really risky and shares get a bad rap. They're not actually. Not exactly. They are not. It depends on the context of time. You see, if your investment time frame is a short one, and what is a short one? Well, we talk about 12 months to say 2 years. That's a short investment time frame, which means how long do I want to invest for, right? Then yes, in a short investment time frame, shares are risky. Why? Because shares require a longer investment time frame, because shares are what we term growth assets. They have the ability to become worth more over a longer period of time if you allow them to do their thing and not interrupt them and not rip it out when, markets go down and you get all nervous. You just got to let it do its thing, but it will provide you that growth over a longer period of time. So are shares risky? Again, I'm going to ask you what in terms of context, what is your investment time frame? Is it short, or do you have 7 to 10 year time frame? Yeah. So when you bring risk back down to a level of context, then all of a sudden it demystifies that nerve-wracking, almost heart-stopping word of risk that everyone gets so nervous about. Let's talk about cash. To say the word cash and risk, it's almost like an oxymoron, right? People go, how can cash be risky? If your investment time frame is 7 to 10 years, at least, this is where we start, and depending on how young you are and how young you start, if you've got 20 years or 25 years ahead of you or 15, that is extraordinary. That is fantastic. Time is always, as I've always said, is your best friend. But if you've got that sort of investment time frame and you're keeping your money in cash, that's really risky. Why? Well, the first thing you're fighting is inflation, right? We all know that. You're fighting inflation. And the other thing is you're not allowing that money to grow over that period of time. So given that you've got that long period of time and that investment time frame, you know that any volatility, and that means the value of your investment goes up and down. And what does volatility really mean? Well, it's your investment responding to external factors such as the political landscape that we live in, the economics that are going on at the time, any wars that are going on around the world. All of these things actually impact the value of your investment, such as shares. However, you've just got to come back to the basic principles. The financial foundational knowledge is that if you have invested in solid companies that have, stood the test of time. And, I'm just going to talk about the ASX 200, so to speak, the top 200 shares in the Australian Stock Exchange. Yeah, they might get a beating depending on what's happening externally, but at the end of the day, if they're solid companies, they're going to rebound, they're going to come back. Okay, so in terms of cash and not allowing your cash to be a part of that growth story in shares, and you've got the time to recover from the volatility that happens, I'm going to say it's nuts, right? So fear not. When someone says, oh my gosh, that's really risky, the first thing I want you to think about is, okay, well, in what context is it risky? So if I've got a 12 to 2-year time frame in investing, should I put my money in the share market? Probably not. And also, it also depends on the purpose of those funds. What do you want to do with those funds? If you've earmarked them for something and you're going to need them in 18 months' time, what if the share market has had a bit of volatility and things are down a little bit? Well, your capital's gone down. Not the best sort of strategy. So best to potentially park that, get a high rate of return and invest for the long term. So risk in the form of when you're thinking about risk, and when I talk about demystifying it, think about it in the context of time, and that will really help you to progress forward. So I guess it really is that simple. And what I want to share with you today is that if you have a solid understanding of each asset class, being shares, property, fixed interest and cash, they're the 4 main asset classes. Asset classes meaning, what type of assets can I invest in? And so they're the main ones. If you have a solid understanding of those, you wouldn't fear the word risk. You'd simply manage it. So I'm going to share with you 3 strategies on how to help you reduce investment risk. The first one is your risk profile. So this is a personalized questionnaire and there's a multitude of questionnaires out there, okay, to assess what your appetite to risk is. So they'll ask you questions like, okay, so you've just invested and within 6 months your portfolio's dropped by 20%. Would you A, pull it all out, B, wait and see, C, wait 3 months and then pull it all out, or D, invest more because the market's gone down and the value of them are cheaper and I'm going to invest a little bit more because I know that I'm going to get that growth when it rebounds. So these types of questions are going to help you analyze exactly where you sit on the spectrum of an investment risk profile. What's your appetite to risk? If those things happen, are you going to get nervous, or are you going to sit and watch and see what happens, or are you going to invest more? So a multitude of questions. You'll do a questionnaire and it'll come out. Generally speaking, there's a lot of terminology out there in terms of risk profile, but generally speaking, you're either conservative, you're either balanced, or you're either growth. And conservative meaning that you're more comfortable having more of your money sitting in fixed interest and cash and less money sitting in property and shares. And as you go up the spectrum from conservative to balanced and from balanced to growth, that percentage flips and you have more in property and shares and less in fixed interest and cash. And again, more as you go into the growth. I'm generalizing. There's lots of different terms depending on whose questionnaire you're doing or where you're investing your money. But that's generally how it works from a conservative to a growth spectrum. So if you know your investment risk profile, and remembering this, your investment risk profile also, your level of understanding of investments will take you from a conservative to more of a balanced growth risk profile. As your understanding and your knowledge improves, you're going to understand these concepts better and become a lot more comfortable with that, which means that if you start off with conservative, you might end up in 6 to 12 months' time being, you know what, I'm a bit more balanced now. And you're not locked into this investment risk profile. You're not locked into, I'm just a balanced investor and that's all it's ever going to be. Absolutely not. Nothing should ever be fixed like that. We are human, we grow, we evolve, and we learn. And as we learn and become more comfortable with these concepts, we're entitled to adapt our risk profile to suit the type of investments we want to go into and to what extent our money sits in those different areas. So number one, knowing your risk profile is one strategy that will help you reduce investment risk, because let me tell you this, if you come out if you're just starting off, let's say you're just starting off on your investment journey, and lack of knowledge always impedes, I guess, being able to progress through. And as that knowledge builds, your risk profile will also build. But let's say you're starting off as a conservative investor because you're not really sure. You're going to get your toes in the water a little bit and check it out and see what that feels like. The important thing is that whatever investment you choose, so if you go into any platform such as Syfe, or these are some of the ones that I'm familiar with, and I'm certainly not saying go on to these. There's a multitude of them. There's apps all over the place. But if you go on to like Syfe or StockSpot, they have pre-populated ETF portfolios, exchange traded funds, which is a portfolio of shares, and you get access to the whole portfolio of shares, for a small amount, like maybe say $1,000 deposit and $200 a month into one of these platforms, you get access to the whole ASX 200, which is the top 200 shares in Australia. To do that individually in your own name would cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. So that is one of the biggest benefits. But using your investment risk profile to guide you on which portfolio to choose, that eliminates investment risk for you. That makes sure that you're sleeping well at night, that you're in the right place, and obviously you need to manage it. Nothing is ever a set and forget for life. As I always say to my beautiful members who are in the Empower program with me, this is now your new life. Just like any other ritual that you may be having, whether you go to the gym twice a week or you go for a walk every morning or whatever you do, you have your annual holiday. Now your financial life is part of what you do, whether it's monthly, fortnightly. I recommend you do it more than 6 monthly or quarterly. You got to be all over your finances, and this is no different. So it's really important to make sure you're reassessing your risk profile. And as that changes and as you become more comfortable and more knowledgeable, I promise you're probably going to go from a conservative to a balance and maybe a growth, and depending on where you're sitting on that spectrum. But that is a fantastic way to make sure you're invested in the right place so you can sleep at night and you're good to go. The second one is, I know you all know this word, diversification, and geez, it's got a beating, but diversification is so simple and one of the easiest techniques to reduce risk. Why? Well, again, coming back to the 4 main asset classes. What are they? Shares, property, fixed interest and cash. So we want to make sure no matter where we're invested across those 4 different asset classes, because every single year, not one of those classes will be the one that outperforms all the others. As an example, in the last 12 months, international shares has been the winner. It's been extraordinary. So if you've had, say, 35 to 40% of your portfolio in international shares, you would have smashed it. You would have got at least 11 to 12% return. But next year, we don't know what the next year holds and which asset class is going to provide you with a lot bigger returns. So if you put all your money just in Australian shares because you're not comfortable with international shares and you've been told shares is the place to be, and if that's going to make the money, why would you keep it in cash and fixed interest? Because we don't know, because past performance doesn't dictate future performance. And as I say, sometimes the crystal ball's broken. We don't know. So we diversify. We put a little bit into each one of those pockets. And that way we make money no matter what's happening, and we smooth that ride of volatility. Otherwise, what your portfolio would do, it'd go bang. If you had everything in international shares, or say 80% in international shares and 20% in, say, cash, you would have gone bang, and then potentially bang, and then bang. And that is no way to invest. It actually doesn't help you in the long term. When you do drop down that cycle of the down cycle and hit the bottom, it takes a long time to recover and come back up. So we're trying to smooth that ride. That's all we're trying to do. And you use diversification as a tool to do that, and it's easy. And the diversification, which says put it into property, shares, fixed interest and cash, to what extent? Based on your risk profile. If your risk profile says you're conservative, you're going to put 60 to 70% in fixed interest and cash, and then you're going to put 30 to 40 in property and shares. That's how they are both connected, and that's how you manage that word risk that we're all so scared about. And it's pretty simple. It's that straightforward. The final piece of the puzzle, and this is something that most people either don't know or kind of think that there's a bit of flexibility around this. And I would suggest, don't think it's flexible. Think of it as a must-do, a must-have, and it doesn't matter how much, it just matters that you do it. And it's called dollar cost averaging, long-term for, hey, add a savings plan to it. So if you went on to one of those platforms and you did a stock spot and you put $2,000 down, Don't just put the 2,000, let it ride for the next 10 years. Add to it on a monthly basis, as little as possible. And each investment will have some sort of a baseline. And let's assume theirs is $200 a month. Make sure you're doing that $200 a month over the next 10 years, because that's the power in compound. That's what will take you from here to here. It'll catapult you to the next level. That is incredibly important. So it's just making sure that you're monthly or quarterly. Obviously, monthly is better than quarterly, and quarterly is better than biannually or annually, because you're adding more often, and more often. The more often you do add, the power of compound is sweeter and will give you the greater growth over the long term. So 3 simple concepts and understanding. Let me just go back for a minute. Let's demystify risk. Why do we get all worked up? Oh my God, it's too risky. Well, is it? Just stand back, ask the question and go, well, hang on, what are we talking about here? In what context are we talking about risk? Because if I have a short time frame and I want to invest in shares, yeah, potentially risky. If I have a long time frame investing in shares, no, not risky at all. Actually, it's a must do, yeah? So context of time. Then how do I manage risk? What are the 3 strategies I use? Do your investment risk profile, and I would do that at least once a year. Renew it every single year to see where you're sitting, and adjust your portfolio according to that risk profile. And that means that the next step was diversification, diversified 100%, put a little bit into all the 4 asset types. Remember, they were property, they were shares, they were fixed interest and cash. Put a little bit into all of those. What percentages? That's based on your risk profile. And then add to it and let it do its thing. Check it every single month or quarter. I mean, as I say, your financial life is part of your life now. It is what you do, because you can't unhear what you've heard and you can't unsee what you've seen. And now that you know, you can't go back. So you've got to go forward, right? So implement this as part of your financial life. You know, we have nutrition. We look after our bodies, and we exercise, and spirituality, and we're talking about mental health. Well, what about financial health? Yeah? This is your now financial health, looking after yourself financially. It's critical. So with that said, onwards and upwards, good luck with it all, and make sure you're listening to my next episode, but also subscribe to our podcast on your favourite podcast platform, and be sure to check out previous episodes. They are quite fun and juicy and a little bit funny at times. Thank you for joining me.